everybody. We want to welcome you to the Hands United, the podcast. My name is Demetrius. I'm the SIBA Operations and Program Manager for the Hands United Division of the Latino Commission on AIDS. We provide technical assistance in many forms to health departments and community-based organizations across the South. So before I introduce our guests, I want to offer some context to kind of guide you through our conversation. So Hands United offered a 2-day community learning lab centered around HIV navigation services. For those who don't know, community learning labs are designed to offer a virtual space to deliver information, enhance knowledge, and build skills in a peer-to-peer way across the South. So day one of our community learning lab was very information heavy and we covered the basics. However, on day two, we had a collective of guest speakers from one of our partners, My Brother's Keeper, specifically the Open Arms Healthcare Center. I openly boast on any day in front of anyone that this organization's dedication to HIV navigation services is top tier. Their presentation was so inspiring, we wanted to continue the conversation. So to do so, we have with us today one of the pillars in their effective and holistic patient navigation, Gerald Gibson. And we'll let him further introduce himself and tell us a little more about My Brother's Keeper and the Open Arms Healthcare Center.
Hello, everyone. I'm Gerald Gibson. I am the Director of LGBTQI Inclusion and Community Engagement. My Brother's Keeper has been around since 1998. The organization started off as an AIDS service organization only, but now we have branched out to where we are effectively trying to dispel all health disparities. So not only is HIV one of our top pillars of work, but we are doing things around diabetes, cardiovascular disease. And right now we're even in the COVID world. So what we realized that as an organization, you have to be able to be innovative. You have to be able to shift. So right now we're doing COVID testing and COVID vaccination. I myself have been in the field of public health for 14 years, and I worked at My Brother's Keeper. We're going to go deeper into that, and I'll tell you about my journey along the way. But thanks you all for having me, and we're going to talk about My Brother's Keeper and how other organizations can be as innovative as us.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate that. So I'm really excited about moving forward. So that kind of leads us into like one of my first questions. So how did you get involved in this work, specifically around HIV and AIDS in healthcare?
Okay, I was working on my postdoctorate degree at my postgraduate degree, not doctorate degree, I'm sorry, at Jackson State University. And I met Dr. Mark Cologne, the founder of My Brother's Keeper. And he was like, what type of work are you doing? I said, well, I'm working for the Transportation Community Administration. He said, well, I see something in you and you could be doing something else. So that was a bright light for me, a shining moment for me when I was like, I need to challenge myself more because my undergraduate degree is in criminal justice. So I was like, I was on the criminal justice path. But when he presented the opportunity of public health, something I never thought about, and actually being a same gender loving man myself, where I can actually help my community, that was something that really made me think. So I started at My Brother's Keeper within the next month as an outreach worker. And my matriculation as My Brother's Keeper has been from the ground up. So I started as an outreach worker in the community, seeing everything, seeing the needs, addressing the needs, trying to understand the needs, because again, I'm a part of the community. So I'm seeing it from two different avenues. I'm a part of the community and I work for the community. So what better way can you get an understanding of your community than seeing it from both of those dynamics? So from there, I moved up to training and facilitator. So now I get to see how programming works. I get to affect change in the sense of by empowering knowledge, by giving them access to prevention education messages. And from there, I moved up to project coordinator. Now I get to see how the money is allocated, where the money is going, how are we funding our people, how are we getting these prevention intervention programs into place, how we're recruiting these individuals. And from there, I started to learn how to develop curriculums. So it's a lot of curriculums under my belt. So the matriculation from the bottom to the top shows you every layer. And guess what you do? You have so much respect for the process and you have so much love for your community because you are not only working for your community, you are helping to define how the community can be seen, what programs are related to the community. And from there, I was able to start working with the Community Advisory Board. Now, this was definitely a bright moment because now I started seeing a different segment of the population. What are their needs? What are their concerns? What's on their mind? How are they being seen? So when we look at it from that aspect, it humbles you. So I was so humbled to be a servant as well as a vessel of knowledge for my community until now I'm missing one. Then I became a manager. I became a projects manager. So from there, I started to manage people. And managing people, you start to see, okay, so how can we facilitate all this work and collectively manage everybody's attitudes, beliefs, and their disbeliefs on certain things? Because believe it or not, our process procedures are not going to look the same to everybody else. So managing people, I have to gain the knowledge of how do I empower this person while at the same time motivating this person, while collectively disciplining this person. So it's something that you have to humble yourself when you're doing it. But what I find out with managing people on that front is if they see me getting in there and doing the work, no matter what it is, the smallest task to the largest task, if they see me doing it, then they understand that guess what? In order to lead, you have to be able to follow. So out of those processes have been doing my matriculation and my brother's keeper, I have learned so much to how to effectively engage the community, manage people, understand budget, understand objectives of the SMART grants. Understand SMART directives to collectively fill your funding source. Because again, with this work, if we're not getting funded, we can't help our people.
I completely agree. So what you're saying is you know it all. That's what it sounds
I'm
like.
still learning. I'm still learning. No one knows it all.
I really appreciate that. And that's a very interesting journey. It's funny how a lot of people who end up getting into this field specifically, it's kind of like you fall into it. It's like your passion for it really stays there when you're directly connected to the work. I know for me, how I got into public health. First off, I didn't know it was a thing in undergrad. My undergrad is in biomedical sciences because I thought I wanted to be a pharmacist. Just because I'm from the country, I'm from Alabama, so all of my not all of my family members, but my grandparents and different relatives like that, they didn't really know what medications they were taking. So it was just like, oh, like my white pill or my round pill or my water pill, that kind of thing. So for me, from a young age, it was like, I really want to help people with learning more about their health. But again, I didn't know what public health necessarily was. I graduated from undergrad, didn't get into pharmacy school nowhere. And so I talked to my advisor and he was like, have you tried public health? I was like, I can't do public health because I'm fat. And he was like, so it's a little bit more to public health than that. I was like, okay. So he kind of introduced me to that. And that's how I pretty much really got started in this field. I say all that to say that it's really interesting how everyone just kind of comes together in this and how your passion pretty much keeps you locked into the work, and it definitely opens spaces for you to continue to grow. So I appreciate you sharing that. You have a very interesting and I would say robust journey because you kind of touch people in a lot of areas. You're a part of the community, you serve the community. So I really enjoy hearing that from you. I kind of want to follow up a little bit on that. I know during the community learning lab, you talked about the importance of a holistic health approach in terms of destigmatizing HIV testing for our listeners. So in trying to achieve this holistic approach to health, what would you say would be like an easy first step for everyone to be able to do, or the organizations that are listening during their next team meeting? What is something they can put at the forefront to kind of get started on holistically approaching people's health?
The first thing I think it is, and it actually is easy, you have to see each individual. You have to see them for them. And once you see them for them, you will start engaging in interactive dialogue, because once they feel that they're being seen, then they will talk. And while they're talking, you are going to listen. So it's going to be interactive. Now, while you listen, you're making mental notes. You want to make sure that they're getting everything out. But the first thing is, if I step into a room and if I'm being seen as Gerald, first thing you're going to see is that I'm a male. Then you're probably going to know that I'm a Black male, but you're not going to know anything else. So don't assume. Ask questions. Ask questions. What are your preferred pronouns? What is your sexual orientation? But ask them in a way that it doesn't feel offensive, that you are looking at me as you going in an all affirming way, where you are really assessing me as a person. Because guess what? You care about my hair care more than I may at the moment, because I have been stigmatized, I have been marginalized, I have been made to feel less than. So therefore, I don't feel like my hair care is right. I don't know what holistic is. But once you get me into that space where I can be brave and empowered to have that conversation, to have that dialogue, that's the first step.
Are you from Mississippi?
Yes, yeah, I'm from the smallest town ever.
Okay.
And it was hard as heck being gay in my small town. So that's why I'm so impassioned about doing the work, because I want everybody to have that space, to have someone to look up to be empowered, to not feel like they're alone. I feel like my journey, I was all alone. I don't ever want a young individual to feel like that again, because that's the worst place to be in. That is the cause for depression. That is the cause for suicide and isolation. I don't want them to have any of those thoughts. I want them to always have someone to look up to and say, he did it, I can do it.
Yeah, I definitely love that. And that's exactly how I approach what I do. Just keeping in mind that me growing up, I really thought that it was just me.
Exactly.
Me alone. I didn't see anybody who looked like me, who act like me, who liked the things that I liked. I was always told that what I liked isn't what I was supposed to like. So you end up like developing this. What I like to say is, when I got to be an adult and had a little more freedom, I kind of had to figure out who I actually was compared to what I had created so that people wouldn't bully me kind of thing. So I really appreciate that that small growing up in the country will really make you like you really develop some tough skin around stuff because people speak like very naively to things that they don't really know anything about, people they don't know anything about, and you just have to kind of sit there and just kind of morph and just become like a better person in the midst of what's happening. So
Exactly.
yeah, I really appreciate that. Yeah, I'm from the country too.
It's
So
the smallest place ever.
yeah, that's why I say where I'm from, all we have is a post office, a railroad track, and a few cows, and the rest of it is just my family. No cell phone service, nothing.
Okay, we do have cell phone service there. Okay, so
No,
we one up you all on there.
no, we don't even have that. It was wild. One of the reasons why I was so excited about going to college was just to get service. It was like, okay, now I can have cell phone service all the time. Like this is a luxury to me. So I love that. So speaking of like just access and different things like that, with us being from very small places, I know we have to talk about COVID-19. So COVID-19 kind of shifted how people like sought after healthcare, pretty much, with not having access to a lot of things. So has that affected how you guys perform your HIV navigation services? And if so, how did you guys adjust to COVID-19?
Initially, we had to pause and remember pause because guess what? The work had to continue. So it was a brief pause, and we had to strategize and redefine how we would get these services done. So what has been a big help, and we have been doing it before, but telehealth, telemedicine has been just beyond impactful in everything that needed to be done in this time of COVID. So if you don't have telehealth service, make sure you implement those services because again, not only is it helping the ones that never had access, it's also re-engaging the ones who felt like they did need the access. So telehealth has been instrumental, and also certain things such as our rapid prep start, our at-home testing, and we still did community testing. But how we did it was in a sense of we had to be more cautious with COVID. So we had all of our COVID protocols in place, but we realized that we couldn't stop. We didn't have a choice because we were talking about in the epidemic is going to go on through a pandemic. So we don't have the opportunity to stop. We can pause, we can readjust. So for anyone out there, you just can pause, get everyone together and strategize on how you can still be effective. And what we also did, we started doing a lot of virtual things. We have a group that called Connect With Us, where a community can come in and interact with us virtually, and they can still get all the information, still be empowered, and still get different services that they need. Because the one thing that we realized about COVID was isolation was killing people. We don't want people to feel isolated. And that was an isolation time. Personally, for myself, I had COVID. In that isolation, I was like thinking that, I'm good. I got all the knowledge. I got all the empowerment. That isolation drove me mad. It drove me mad. And also, from a sex positive standpoint, I couldn't have my sex on demand. So that was another problem for me. I'm used to having my sex on demand. I couldn't have that either. So that became an issue for me.
When I look at you, I see myself. So I definitely know what that feels like.
We're being honest here, right?
Right, we are. Yeah, and that's COVID it kind of introduced a lot of different ways to like not only just like pursue health, but how even how people like pursue sex. And with a different way of pursuing sex, people are now introducing themselves to arguably could be new risks.
Right.
So even with that in mind, so what did your organization kind of learn from COVID as it relates to, I guess, STD transmission and different things like that? Like
what we learned that STD transmission was going through the roof. And what we had to do is we started our condom distribution program through the mail. We had a vast number. We've always had a program called Keep Your Clients Coming, where we went to beauty shops and barber shops and places of that nature. We want your clients to come back and get their hair cut. But we had to play on words for it.
Oh, yeah.
So we always had that in place. But what we realized was we had to massive distribute even on a bigger level. So now we are everywhere making sure that there are condoms there, and we have the mail out program. Because again, we're talking about in a time where I'm feeling vulnerable, I'm not going to think about my risk. In fact, they're going to go out the window. Because right now I'm feeling alone, I'm feeling isolated. So I'm going to take more risk. And what we realized for individuals taking more risk because our STI numbers were going through the roof. So what we came in was, and again, we're going to talk about this later, so I want to touch on it. It talks about the status neutral approach, something that we were already doing, but we'll talk about that later. But we realized again that every client. We can't treat them in a cookie cutter situation. We have to look at them and look at their risk factor, but we have to allow them to take power in there and own it and ownership. So once they take that ownership and we're there to just validate and say, there's nothing wrong with you having 10 partners. However, you could use a condom with one.
Exactly. With one.
With one. That's less than your risk. That's less than your risk. So we want to decrease risk, harm reduction.
Okay. Yeah. So with that in mind, like, how did that kind of affect you guys as it relates to PrEP? I know you said you did a massive distribution of condoms. Did you guys change anything about the way in which you like navigated people through PrEP?
Yes. I mean, PrEP ended up being what we could do rapid start, because we went home, we would send the home testing kits. So individuals could access PrEP through telehealth as well. So you have to give them, what we try to do here is give individuals a menu of options. Some individuals just have such a stigma with coming to any place to get an HIV test. And that goes back, and I think I was telling you all in the last, we did the learning lab about a Becoming Healthy Youth program, where we try to take the bite out of stigma, because guess what? We're not focusing on your HIV test, but we are focusing on your HIV test. So we giving you we're doing everything as we're doing STI tests, we're doing HIV tests, and your blood pressure, your glucose, your BMI. So we're thinking about it from a holistic perspective. So you know what, Gerald, we want to look at your whole body and see what's going on.
I love that. That was one of the things that really blew me away when you guys were talking about it, because that's one of the main things that a lot of organizations are striving to do, and that I think really helps is when you shift the focus from just, you're here for an HIV test, to no, you're just making sure you're okay, and HIV just happens to be a portion of what that looks like. That's really important. I would say even before, like, I got really to when I moved to Atlanta, before, when I pursued health, they never really include my sexual health as a portion of my health. Anything that I pursue, like when it comes to sexual health, was as a result of an encounter. And I really think that was like a missed opportunity, or people oftentimes miss opportunities to explore people's sexual health, and by simply just asking questions while you have them present, when you built that rapport and they're really comfortable with you.
Right.
With that in mind, I would say just you in general, not necessarily how you guys operate. What are some tactics or ways that you use to kind of build rapport with the people that you serve so that they start to trust Gerald?
Well, I have to be honest about who I am. Just like we were talking about being sex positive, you have to give a little bit of yourself in order for, if you live in this straight lace, I'm not having sex, and you work in a sexual health clinic and your nonverbals are turning people off and they don't see you as being authentic, you have to be your authentic self. So once they see that, everything else is going to fall into place. A couple of visits down the line, y'all going to be laughing and talking about family and everything else. But they have to see you as an authentic person, that a person that, guess what, that's living life as well. And if you're not per se living life, they don't want to be judged. That, someone thumping the Bible at them, giving them those nonverbals that are disagreeing. Because guess what? If you're a part of the LGBTQI population, community, segments, we have already been through that. And we have taken our power back. We're not going through it again. Like I tell everybody, healthcare is your right. If your provider is not the right provider, get you another provider. Your provider is there for you. You are not there for them. Ask all the questions that you feel you need to ask. It's no bad question. When we talk about your sexual health, let's talk about everything. Let's encompass the whole person. I want you to take your power back.
I love that. I really love that. And a portion of that too is pretty much just being culturally competent when it comes to a lot of these providers, because I don't think they understand. Well, I would say older providers, in my experience, I think a lot of times there's a missed opportunity because they don't understand how open younger people are about sex, and how willing some people are willing to talk about it, where they kind of avoid. And it's like, no, I feel comfortable telling you about all of that. You just have to ask me. So
it's not about the client's comfortability. It's about the provider's comfortability.
Absolutely.
See, again, it's not about the provider, it's about the client. So if you are not comfortable to be in this space, you might not need to be the type of provider in these different clinics, in these different settings, because you are not, if you're not open, the client's going to shut down. Your nonverbals are going to tell me how you really feel. You're feeling uncomfortable, your body language, everything about you is going to be like, I'm just here, I want you gone. I'm just checking out the box. I'm not even really checking on you. It is no way that none of my clients that are living with HIV should come from any type of provider visit not knowing their CD4 count and their viral load. That's something they definitely should know. I'm always asked, what's your CD4 count? What's your viral load? And if someone say, what's that? I'm ready to go see who is your provider again. We got to have a conversation.
Exactly, because that's one portion of it that you could definitely be more in control of, and not only that, you teach clients empowerment in their own health, what that looks
Exactly.
like.
They have to take control of it.
Yeah, it's definitely a normalization of what that looks like. So, yeah, I definitely agree with you on that standpoint. So moving into like, I know you mentioned this a little earlier, where we talked about the status neutral approach. It's a, I wouldn't say a fairly new approach, but I've been hearing a lot more about it as of recently, as a viewpoint of how to go through HIV testing and then navigating people into the subsequent care that they may need.
Right.
So, in your own words, or in science words, can you explain what status neutral is and how it has shifted the level of work that you all provide?
Okay. Now I'm gonna be honest with you. We have actually been having a status neutral approach without defining a status neutral for years because Dr. Gibson, her
Ah,
vision is everything. And I love the way she let us take control. So she's the president and CEO of My Brother's Keeper. Open Arms is our clinical arm for My Brother's Keeper. And her thing is, look, I'm not on the ground with you all. If you all bring me some new approach, some new ideas, some innovative thoughts, let's get it done because I'm not seeing the work from the angle that you were seeing. And I think that some CEOs and some EDs they clamp down on their employees and their everybody else, and they don't see the vision. Like I'm on the ground, I'm with the community. I can see the vision. I can see what they're telling me. They're going to talk to me before they talk to someone else. But when we talk about the status neutral approach, we're talking about providing, or we define HIV prevention and care. So we're talking about the prevention piece, which is PrEP and all the other tools we have in our toolbox. And we're talking about you equals you. We're talking about getting individuals in the care, getting people adherent, talking about their art. We're talking about it from both lenses. However, what we're doing is we're not going out there saying you're HIV positive and you're HIV negative. We're telling them together, collectively, we want to maintain your health status. So if you're negative, we want to keep you negative. If you're living with HIV, we want to make sure that you're virally suppressed. We want to make sure that you're getting everything that you need, all the wraparound service, the transportation, the mental health, the housing. But guess what? For so long, what we did was, before this approach came, we were leaving the individuals that was HIV negative out in the car. We was like, okay, your test negative today. Go home. We'll see you in 3 months. Now, they may come back in 3 months, and now they're living with HIV. We did not give them the prevention tools that they needed. We were missing it. We didn't have the messaging together. And we've had the messaging together for a while now. The status neutral just came to the forefront where everybody's seeing it, but the messaging has been together for a while. We've had PrEP. We talk about because here at Open Arms, case management is for everybody. So case management is for if you live with HIV or if you're HIV negative. And what we're doing is HIV negative, let's assess with you. What do you need? What do you need from us? How can we be of service to you? How can is PrEP something you want? Because of course we're going to talk about PrEP, but it may not work for everybody. So what are some other options? And in addition to PrEP, what do you need? Because we're talking about individuals that may be commercial sex workers. That's not frowned upon. Everyone has to make a living. But we want to make sure that as you being a commercial sex worker, for example, how can we minimize your risk? How can we harm reduction techniques for you? So when we look at it, we're looking at it from a lens that everybody's seeing it now. But I think a lot of agencies have already been doing the work. We just didn't have it defined as status neutral approach.
and that's usually how a lot of stuff ends up coming about. It's like, oh, we've been doing that for a minute.
Yeah, seriously.
We just didn't call it that. But
Right.
okay, that's nice. now we can throw it in a grant, and now we get the grant because now we have a status neutral approach.
Right.
I love that. I love that. Speaking on, you mentioned a little bit about PrEP. Sometime last week, we hosted a PrEP Institute for the state of Alabama.
Okay.
And a large number of individuals who attended were Black women. And they talked about how marketing for PrEP didn't necessarily appeal to them. It wasn't for them per se, and a lot of people didn't know that that women could ultimately utilize PrEP. In your experience, what has that looked like navigating women, Black women, or even trans women through your HIV navigation services? Whether the ultimate goal was PrEP or just more frequent testing, what does that usually look like for you?
I think the goal is both. So, but what you have to look at, the messaging has not been there for trans. Trans women have been left out. Oh my God. Oh, so much. We don't have enough data. Now we can talk about infection rate, but for the longest, trans women was getting lumped in the category as MSM. That is not the category they belong. We have the messaging. There's so many programs we're not for them. Now, Black women have always had their messaging. It kind of different from the messaging of funding, but funding streams now have changed because initially when the funding was strictly for gay white men. And then you had individuals like Dr. Cologne that went to Washington, D.C. and said, you know what? We have a problem here. We need money too.
Right.
So when the funding starts change, starts shifting. But when you look at the message, I think it's imperative that each organization look at themselves and say, this is the work we're trying to do. However, we may not have the funding sources, but when you look at funding, there are so many alternative sources. You don't have to, you have foundational money, you have other sources, private donation, where the funding sources, the objectives are not so stringent. You can actually get to be able to appeal to more not more organizations, more population. Now, we know that we talking about the transgender population, the funding is there now. But do we have the cultural competency? Do we have the capacity to reach those populations? Because again, we talk about, if I'm a trans woman, I need someone that's in there like me that can understand my story. So I need a reflective staff that where I can almost see myself. Absolutely. And when we talk about that, those individuals need to be trained. They need to have the empowerment piece. They need to have the training. They need to have the access to all the tools they need to be efficient in their capacity as a community outreach worker or whatever that their capacity is for the organization. So I think initially and at the end of the day, organizations have to look at themselves and see how they want to be impacting the community. And if we talk about ending the epidemic, we have to be able to access our population in a culturally competent manner.
I completely agree. And that's dope that you really feel that way about viewing it. We talked about or touched on during the Prep Institute about how we push and push and push for the staff to be reflective of our priority population. And a lot of times in that, organizations are trying to market towards Black women or get trans women into prep services or different type of services, but their staff doesn't look like them.
Well, see, that's going to be a problem. That's going to be an issue for the population then, because they are not seeing themselves reflective in the individuals that are bringing the messaging.
Exactly. It's so important. And I guess a lot of times when you're I say a lot of times in this work, I've always been the priority population. So everything has always been geared towards my interest and what that looks like. So
Right.
oftentimes you forget that, oh, I can see how someone who this isn't meant for can look at this and say, oh, that isn't for me.
Right.
So I definitely understand that. Speaking of the trans community, do y'all have any trans services that you guys offer specifically, or ways in which you've like kind of maneuvered through different services to make sure that you include the trans population?
We offer one of the most important services here in Mississippi for the trans population, gender affirmation therapy. Okay. It's something, and we make sure that it's affordable, that they're being able to see everything that they need. We also know that sometimes that the individuals that are living with HIV, that their medication, the HIV medications may not correlate. So we have to provide us, it's cutting edge. I'm really proud of our trans services, our transgender services. And we they come from everywhere, because in Mississippi, it's just no other clinics that are doing that affirming service. And they come from, I think they come from other states as well. But I know the entire state of Mississippi, they're coming from everywhere. And we're making sure that it's affordable and it's culturally competent.
I love that.
We have the mental health piece that goes along with it as well, because they have to have that in order to be able to, that's a criteria that has to be met for them to even start the therapy.
So I kind of want to touch back on like growing up. I know we had the connection on being from small towns and also identifying as being same gender loving. Yes. So how was that like growing up for you?
Oh, growing up, I have all affirming family. They didn't know it at the time, and I didn't realize I was different because I was in the sports. I had got a track scholarship to Alcorn. I was a track star in high school. Growing up, I knew I was different. It was scary seeing the difference, trying to figure it out, because what I did know is in my small town, I think we had one gay man, same gender loving individual, and he was ostracized. And oh my God, that was so scary to be the second, that was officially, I don't use the term out, the second person that was being authentic about themselves. That was scary for me. So I hid it for years. And when I matriculated to Alcorn State University and seeing the different people, I pledged my fraternity, Phi Beta Sigma, I saw the light to come on where I was more empowered. I started empowering myself. And so that was amazing and scary at the same time, because again, I still hadn't identified no mentor that I could really look up to at the time. So it was scary. It was scary. I was walking on pins and needles every day, scared that someone's going to figure out that I like men or boys at the time.
Yeah. I'm very similar in that. I mean, I didn't know what it was. I know even for me, when I was young, and of course as children you don't really like know anything. All I know is that it was one of those things of someone new coming in class, and I have the distinctive memory of being young and being like, oh, I want to hold his hand. Like that kind of thing of I don't know what that is, but I want to hold his hand. Whatever that is. So I definitely know what that looks like. I wouldn't necessarily that I had a family that was affirming per se. It was one of those things that we never talked about. We had people in the community who we all knew were gay or possibly trans, honestly. Now that I have the knowledge that I have. But like you said, they were kind of ostracized. You didn't really associate yourself with them. You didn't have much to say with them out of fear of being connected to what that looks like. Now, granted, me being me, I've always been me. I tell myself all the time when I came out, I don't know why it was such a shock to anybody, because I've always been me. I've always liked what I liked, and I've getting the bullying and stuff growing up. People just calling me slurs and different stuff like that. That I kind of normalized that. Oh no, that's just kind of like what I am, I guess, because y'all have told me what I am,
Mm.
that kind of thing. So, in the midst of that, what would you say was something that was kind of missing when you grew up? I know you said necessarily you knew you were different, but you didn't necessarily identify the way that you do now. Would you say that something was missing?
Oh, I didn't have the confidence that I have, and I didn't have the love for myself. I doubted myself. I was afraid to be me because, again, I thought that my family wasn't going to love me. Now, when I say all affirming, they are all affirming now. Back then, they didn't know how to be. So you got to realize when you go through matriculation in life, you're going to learn, your family going to learn too. Some are going to learn, and some you just got to leave by the wayside, family included. But however, my family accepted me, and we're taking this journey together. Because with life, you never stop learning. We're still constantly learning. That's why mom say every day, say, we learning something new today. I'm like, girl, stop. Girl, stop. Because she be on it. Oh my God, that woman be on it.
I love that. That's something that's kind of like dope for me going through now. As I get older, me and my mom get a lot closer, and I wouldn't say that she's like, oh yeah, I love all of that, but you can tell that there's a shift in as I become more comfortable with myself, she becomes more comfortable with who I am, seeing that, oh, my child has pretty much been the same person the whole time.
That's
I
it.
just saw what I wanted to see.
That's it. That's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah, so
That's it.
uh, I really love that. So in terms of, look, I'm about to be real dramatic. If you can speak to your younger self, what is something that you would offer? Like what is like a nugget or like a tidbit that you would tell 12-year-old you that you think would kind of like set you up for like today?
Well, my whole life motto is love. It's tattooed on my back. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love never fails. So when you talk about that, it's about the love of yourself first. Because if I don't, and you get it from RuPaul, what drag race, if you don't love yourself, how the heck you gonna love somebody else?
Somebody else.
So it's love. It starts with love, but realize that guess what? We talk about God and the way they whooped us with the Bible verse, the few that they don't understand. God is love. If you're talking about being a Christian is to help someone when they're down, not kick them, not push them, not bully them, not ostracize them. So what I would tell my younger self is Gerald love you because you are perfect. You are made in God's image.
I love that. Yeah, I would. I would tell myself that too, but I would also tell my younger self to be a little bit more fearless. Granted, as a child, you only have that window of what you've experienced thus far, but I think I robbed myself of a lot of experiences out of fear of people treating me differently. And retrospectively, they treated me different anyway. So what would have been the change? And me just honestly honing in on who I was. There were people that I grew up with who were so fearless in their sexuality and who they were that looking back on it, it was like, a wow, I wish I could have done that. But I mean, I was fearing for my safety at that moment in time. So that's all I knew. So I appreciate you saying that. I kind of want us to talk a little bit more about the lack of resources or lack of access to things that we had growing up compared to now. And just to give like a little example of that, I know me growing up, like I said before, I felt very isolated. I didn't feel like I had a sense of community when it came to my interests, but now I do. I surround myself with people who like what I like, who love the way I love, who live the way I live, and that's a beautiful thing. So I kind of want to talk more about what that looked like growing up, how we can tell people who may be listening now about how to tap into those resources now, but specifically from our point of view as people of color.
Well, I mean, for me back then, there definitely was no resources. I'm a 70s baby. So in the sense of there were no resources, we are still talking about how like you said, it was unspoken. We didn't talk about it. You may have knew that Uncle June would always bring the same male friend with him, and no one said anything. So there were no resources. There was no one to talk to. The one person that I possibly could have talked to was the person I was afraid to talk to, the one individual that was being ostracized by the whole small town. So for me, there were no resources. Now let's fast forward to 2022. There are all of the resources. The resources are here, but in order to access them, you have to feel safe enough within yourself, love yourself enough, feel empowered enough to even step out there and access those resources. Because guess what? Even accessing those resources can be stigmatizing. So when we look at that, someone can go back and see your browser history or anything, because once you're out there, anything you do can be traced. So when we look at that from that standpoint, you have to feel empowered enough. So what my message to the young individuals, sometimes you have to fake it until you make it. If you do not have the resources to get out on your own, you do not need to go disclosing all of your business to individuals that's going to go and expose you. It's too easy. It's a push of a button for social media to expose everything that you done said, for them to have information on your text message and everything. So I try to tell them, be cautious in how they move. I understand that we want to be free. I understand that we're empowered. But when you don't have the educational attainment yet, when you do not have the money, you do not have the employment, you have to still live off your parents' dime. Be very careful on how you say and do what you're saying. No, I'm not saying don't be yourself, but I'm cautioning you on how it can end. And it can end badly for some people. I've had individuals that come out to their parents, and I don't use the word coming out, for their parents to actually kick them out. Now, when I go back and tell these parents, when you're kicking your kids out, they don't have education, they don't have employment, they have no way to fund themselves. You are putting them in the harm's way of HIV, because the only thing that's next is commercial sex work. So I really want to, like, a parent is to love their child irregardless, right? Unconditionally. I don't see how they can do that. So that baffles me with a lot of parents. And this is still going on. Yeah. And I know I got kind of off topic, but that's just one of my pet peeves.
Oh no, I definitely agree with that. I'm a '90s baby, so in terms of me or whatever, a big thing for me was social media. So you speaking about things kind of just being out there and you not being able to pull them back. That
Can't
was my
control them
lived
once they out
experience.
there.
Yeah, that was my lived experience as like a teen or whatever. Back in Marbury, it was like MySpace and different stuff like that. So that, I mean, MySpace outed me, if I ain't gonna hold you.
Oh my
my,
God.
my mama ended up coming across my MySpace and saw pictures of me up there with some boy, and life was never the same. I'll say that. So for you, how has social media kind of like impacted your work or changed the work, like in terms of stories of people and how they navigate through that?
Well, social media connects you people from all different parts of the world. It also helps you to message a clear message to everyone. Now, you also, and then we have to talk about the good and the bad on that. You also have to monitor how you, now, even in my personal life, I have to monitor how I move on social media, because it's going to be tied back to my work. So that's the thing about working in public health. You have to realize that you're tied to your work. No matter how you don't want to be, you're tied to your work. So you still have to be very mindful. But what that has done is it has helped me with my messaging, in my life message as well as my work message, to define it very clearly. But what I did want to do, and I've seen a lot of people do, they get lost in the sense of their work life and their professional life is so intertwined that they lose themselves. So I'm conscious to make sure that I'm constantly monitoring my social media, but I'm constantly monitoring my mental space, because the work enough can be draining. When you're seeing individuals that are still being diagnosed with HIV, individuals that we still have individuals that are still dying from HIV, and we know that should not be happening. So it hurts you sometimes that, guess what? Maybe my message is not as effective as I thought it was. So it's always a chance to go back and look at your message and look at yourself, reflect on it, and see what you can do better. Yeah. Because ending the epidemic is closer than we think, but we are not there yet.
I agree. I definitely agree. That social media is very interesting.
It's good and bad.
Like I said, it does what it needs to do when it needs to do it, but it also does a lot more than you ask it to do.
Right. You can do a lot of more harm than good.
Yeah, I agree. Even now, I mean, if we're gonna talk about it, let's talk about it. Like even now with how people like look at social media, I would say a big trend now that you hear a lot about is the way people like navigate through Twitter in terms of pursuing sex now.
That's but that's always been at those backdoor channels.
And it's wild to me because I'm really like kind of seeing it a lot more now, specifically in like Atlanta. And the messaging that's on Twitter doesn't align with like good practices when it comes to how people not should pursue sex, but how they pursue their health, kind of thing. So social
But
media
you
can
got to
definitely.
realize we're talking about sex and not sexual health. We're just talking about sex. So not sexual health, just sex.
That's fair. That's
And
fair.
so what we have to do is we have to backdoor them and give them prevention tools that they don't even think they need.
Mm.
So it's like when I get messaged about sex toys, guess what I do? I go take them some condoms, just drop them off at the door and don't go in. And so I'm giving them something that they may not know they need, and it's there. So we're talking about PrEP. We always talking about PrEP. We got PrEP on all the different sites that you can get PrEP, and we even incentivizing it. Because guess what? Incentives get some people to move. Because what we realized with COVID, if you get that $50 incentive card, people forgetting why they didn't get the vaccination. Now they want it. Exactly. And that's $100 for the first and second dose.
Yeah.
So sometimes we have to incentivize our message. We don't want to over incentivize. See, that's tricky too. You can over incentivize, but whatever gets you to come to the table. Now, once I get you there, I gotta feed you with that knowledge. But at least I have you at the table to even start the dialogue. So when we doing it, it's our practices. They have to constantly evolve. They have to constantly move, because what worked yesterday and what worked a minute ago might not work the next minute.
It definitely doesn't. And that's another way too that I would say I've used social media when it comes to work. I know for me, I've had a friend who told me, "Oh, sometimes you can overshare on social media," but I had to tell them. I said I recognize how people view me on my social media. I'm the HIV guy when it comes to, like, they know I've been in public health for a minute. They know that I know what it looks like to navigate through those services. So when I go and get tested, or when I go to the doctor's office, if it's nothing but me taking a picture of my feet and being like getting tested, if I post something like that, people are gonna comment on my Instagram story and say, "Oh, where do you get tested?" or "Who is your doctor?" and different stuff like that or whatever. So I definitely feel like tapping into innovation and what works today. Stuff as simple as that can connect people to services.
Oh yes, most definitely.
I had a friend. I have a friend that's out in Texas who texted me and said, "Hey, somebody should be writing you soon. They asked about PrEP in Atlanta." And I said, "I don't know, but my friend do." So they followed me on Instagram and DM me, and I was telling them about different places in Atlanta that they can pursue PrEP. And it's as simple as that. Like, you don't know who knows who, what that looks like. And I found that social media pretty much, like, that's how people pursue a lot of information.
Oh yes,
and how a lot of people pursue health too.
Oh yes, that's true. That is true. But see, remember what you go back to what you said when you said that you are the HIV guy. Your work is now defining you. Yeah. So it goes back to what I was saying. So we have to watch how we move. But what I know individuals, because I've been doing the work so long, I know individuals in every state pretty much, where if someone moved, they don't call me and say, "Oh, where can I go to, continue my care? Or where can I go to possibly get started on PrEP, or to continue being on PrEP?" So that's the great thing. We are vessels of resource, and I love that in the work that I'm doing, because at the same time, not only I'm empowering my community, I'm continuing to care for my community as they move and matriculate through life. Because I don't want them to be stagnant and feel like, "Oh, I got to stay here because I can't get my medication there. Or I got to stay here because I can't be in care there." No, you can move anywhere you want, but I need you to make sure that you follow all the steps you make to make sure that you get your records transferred. Make sure you're doing everything that you need to do now, because you don't want to go there and start from scratch. They need to see exactly what's going on with your health.
Exactly. And that speaks a lot to even the subject matter that we're talking about with HIV navigation services. Some people honestly have no idea how to navigate through those services.
That's why we're here.
Exactly.
They don't. That's why we're here.
To one place, and they stay in that one place, and they think in their mind that that's what care looks like.
Right.
They don't know that their care can be just so much better if they just kind of explore, or even just talk about it openly. So that's what I'm really hoping that this kind of leads to: people being transparent about healthcare and the pursuit thereof when it comes to HIV navigation services, that they're able to be like, "Okay, you know what? I kind of want to have a conversation about this. I kind of want to talk about what I don't think my doctor is doing, because I don't think we talk about that."
And that's it. That's the empowerment piece. Now I want to go somewhere where I can feel whole, where they see me and I can talk about everything that and I keep just talking about multiple partners, there's other things, but I think a lot of people feel ashamed about that. It's nothing wrong, but I want to go there and say, "You know what, this week I had 7 partners, one for every day of the week. Let's talk about it. Exactly. Let's talk about all the different sexual positions. Let's talk about what I can do to minimize my risk." But if I feel like I can't have that dialogue, and I'm just going out there still staying and living in these risk factors.
Hmm. That's one of the things that I loved about the provider that I ended up getting in Atlanta. I came to initially to get on prep. So after maybe like my first or second like visit when it comes to talking about prep, he asked me the question of, so how's everything else going? And I was like, ooh. So we started talking about at that time I was in my master's program. I was like, honestly, I think I probably had an anxiety attack the other day. I'm not completely sure. So we started talking about that. He helped me when it came to navigating anxiety, when it came to weight loss and all this kind of stuff. So now I still go to you for prep, but I also go to you because I know that you care about everything that's happening. Because you know that if I'm suffering from anxiety, I'm not gonna be on my medication the way I
So
should
what
be.
kind of care is that?
Holistic.
Holistic.
I love it. And that's see,
Came back
that's
full circle.
right here,
Came back
full
full
circle.
circle.
Look, and there you have it, folks. I'll be every week. Okay, as I told y'all before, I feel like Gerald and as well as his colleagues are top tier when it comes to HIV
And we
navigation
appreciate that.
services. They're so knowledgeable about everything. They know how to touch all of these various communities. I just really get excited just talking about it with you. So again, I'm Demetrius, and I appreciate you coming out to kind of talk to us about the services that you provide. It's been an amazing talk, and I'm glad that we were able to kind of continue this on a more personal level to kind of just bounce off of each other as a follow up for our presentation.
Well, thank you for having me. Anytime you need me again or any other of our subject matter expertise from Open Arms and My Brother's Keeper, just reach out. We are here with open arms.
That's it. All right. Thank you so much, Gerald. I wanna talk